Called out on this because I called Donald Trump a wannabe dictator. It's because he is. It's because he is. Oh, the governor's being mean and the governor's speaking out on that. Well, maybe it's time for us to be a little meaner. Maybe it's time for us to be a little more fierce. Because we have to ferociously push back on this. And again, I'll speak to my teacher colleagues in here. The thing that bothers a teacher more than anything is to watch a bully, to watch this bully and to stop it. And when it's a child, you talk to them and you tell them why bullying's wrong. But when it's adult like Donald Trump, you bully the shit out of him back. You push back. You make sure they know it's not there.
Donald Trump and his political movement have spent the last 10 years stripping away every bit of humanity and decency from our politics. MAGA views empathy as something to chastise rather than a sign of character and leadership. They excuse, enable, and justify violence with their rhetoric. And it is the reason why these politically motivated attacks have become so commonplace in America, and why, unfortunately, no one was surprised by the disgusting attacks Donald Trump was levying against Tim Walz, not only after his state lost a leader, but he lost a dear friend. And it is the reason why we see Tim Walz now hitting back against Trump, calling him out. And we are going to get into that response that Governor Walz gave. But before we do, I want to start with the compassionate response he gave on the day of that shooting. Then hear Trump with his vile bile before we check out Tim Walz's response. But like I said, let's start with what he had to say on that day.
That's 48 hours that law enforcement involved in a complex and dangerous manhunt. Spent Father's Day away from their families to deliver justice for Melissa and Mark Hortman and their children who spent this Father's Day alone. To the law enforcement who stand here and the hundreds who were involved in this, the state of Minnesota owes you a deep debt of gratitude. Thank you. You ran towards the danger and you served the state of Minnesota. This is a great example of coordination and collaboration. Multiple agencies, federal, state, and local, coordinating together in a way to protect the public and close this hunt around. Multiple agencies were there as FBI laid hands on it and Minnesota State Patrol put the handcuffs on. One man's unthinkable actions have altered the state of Minnesota. Melissa Hortman was the core of who our values were. She had a hand in so many things that happened. The building that we stand in, she helped usher through so that we could respond from the State Emergency Operations Center with the professionalism and giving the tools necessary to law enforcement to do their job. To Melissa and Mark's family, I cannot fathom your pain and the grief that you're going through. We'll take solace in the memory and the work that Melissa did, and you can rest assured that we will put every ounce of effort that the state of Minnesota has to make sure that justice is served and the individual responsible for this serves the time for the unspeakable act. State grieves with you. To John and Yvette Hoffman, the latest news is Senator Hoffman came out of his final surgery and is moving towards recovery. Yvette is healing. And I think when the story comes out, and I'd like to say on behalf of the state of Minnesota, the heroic actions by the Hoffman family and their daughter Hope saved countless lives, and we are grateful. Bureau of Criminal Apprehension will continue to investigate. We will keep you informed. We'll spare no expense and no work to make sure that that happens. A moment in this country where we watched violence erupt. This cannot be the norm. It cannot be the way that we deal with our political differences. Now's the time for us to recommit to the core values of this country. And each and every one of us can do it. Talk to a neighbor rather than arguing. Debate an issue. Shake hands. Find common ground. This is who Melissa Hortman was. In the first negotiating session that I had a chance to work with her, she got all the partners in the room, and she provided each and every one of us a copy of a book called Getting to Yes. And the whole premise was debating with a sense of goodwill, a sense of trying to come to compromises that serve everyone. And because of her, we did that. Because of her, we did that year after year after year. That's the embodiment of how things are supposed to work. It's not about hatred. It's not about mean tweets. It's not about demeaning someone. It's leading with grace and compassion and vision and compromise and decency. That was taken from us in Minnesota with the murder of Speaker Hortman. So for each and every one of us to truly honor, and we will continue to honor that spirit, but we will need to do it in just more than actions in a memorial. Conducting ourselves in the spirit that Melissa Hortman did her work is what the country needs to heal. I will once again say the deep debt of gratitude. These professionals standing behind us and countless others. This was, you'll hear from them, incredibly complex. And to take this suspect in with no life of life or injuries to civilian population and to bring him in alive so he can serve justice, which he will do in Minnesota, is an incredible thing that we are grateful for. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the professionals, starting with Commissioner of Public Safety for the state of Minnesota, Bob Jacobson.
That right there is what a leader sounds like, someone in a moment of tragedy trying to unite his state in the face of fear. That is the response we should expect from our elected leaders. That type of response should not be a surprise, but if Donald Trump said anything along those lines, we would all be stunned. Because again, his movement undermines the humanity in our politics because they view their opposition as less than human, no matter the circumstances. That is how they operate. And it's the reason why Donald Trump has still refused to call Tim Walz, saying gross things about him as he is in mourning. We can see this here, and it in a gross statement that he made before we get into what Governor Walz responded.
Have you called the governor yet or been able to speak to any of them?
I don't really call him. Look, he anointed this guy to a position. I think the governor of Minnesota is so whacked out. I'm not calling him. He's a mess. So, I could be nice and call him, but why waste time?
When Trump was first asked whether he would call Governor Walz after the tragic shooting, he said, well, it's a terrible thing. I think he's a terrible governor. I think he's a grossly incompetent person. But I may call him. I may call other people too. How is it that in a moment like this, all Donald Trump can think about is himself? The only thing he cares about is what makes him feel good. And of course, what makes Donald Trump feel good is attacking other people. But this is what his movement is about all the time. You must be committed to viewing the opposition as the enemy, as less than human, as undeserving of respect and dignity. It is why Donald Trump and his Republicans are so comfortable stealing health care away from tens of millions of Americans, because they don't even consider them. They will only consider you if you are a wealthy billionaire who is willing to shell out millions of dollars for their campaigns. They do not care about their constituents. They don't care about anyone, but Governor Walz does. And that is why he hit back against Donald Trump. And I want to take a look right here. Walz rips Trump for politicizing, shooting of dim lawmakers be a president for all Americans. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz had some choice words for Donald Trump after the commander-in-chief rejected the notion of calling the governor in the wake of a shooting of Democratic figures that rocked the state. Governor Walz wishes that President Trump would be a president for all Americans. But this tragedy isn't about Trump or Walz. A spokesperson for the governor said in a statement to CNN's Caitlin Collins, it's about the Hortman family, the Hoffman family, and the state of Minnesota. And the governor remains focused on helping. All three. Heal Walz statement came hours after Trump told Caitlin Collins aboard Air Force One that he refused to call Walz in the wake of the shooting, going so far as to imply it was a waste of time. Trump saying, I'm not calling him. Trump said, why would I call him? I could call him and say, hi, how are you doing? The guy doesn't have a clue he's a mess, so I could call him to be nice, but what a waste of time now. On the day of this shooting and the days following, I was pretty emotional in my response to what had happened, and how could you not be? But one thing that I continue to reiterate is that I didn't want to feel as if I was politicizing this moment by talking about the ways that Donald Trump's movement has fundamentally shifted how our country views political opposition to the point of stripping away the basic humanity and dignity of other people. But it is not inherently political to say that when people's lives are on the line, Donald Trump has politicized this moment with his attacks on Governor Walz, not trying to solve a problem, resolve an issue, or help the state heal, simply airing out his own grievances. But that is what the MAGA movement is about. It is a politics of very petty, very, very petty personal grievance. That is what it has always been about. These are not people who operate within a framework of common sense as they claim. They are not looking out for their neighbor or our country. If they were, they would not be acting with these violent attacks, but yet they continue to and justify them. Donald Trump began his presidency with a justification of any violence on his behalf. And ever since we have known what to expect, a very scary Donald Trump gangster state in which political intimidation is what runs our country, not law and order, which he claims to love. And it is why it is so important we have Democratic governors like Governor Walz standing up and protecting us from this administration. And it is the reason. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Until next time, I'll see you soon.